In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 118 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is obsession. Our quote of the day comes to us from John Waters. Without obsession, life is nothing. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode. Our guest is quite an interesting gentleman that has a mission of helping 1 million people become better, more aware, and more successful financially. I think in today's day and age, where many people are still recovering from the crash of 2008 and 2009, Damion Lupo is definitely onto something. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Damion, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, I am really honored and thrilled to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate it. So first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Dude, I am so ready to bring it. I'm kind of tingling and a little levitating.
That's the first time anybody said that, so that's awesome. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you that you could have given up and given in, but you didn't, and you kept on going.
I think the most severe time that I've ever experienced was in 2008 when I had built up a business over 10 years, had all this success and accolades, and I lost everything. I lost $20 million. And it sounds like a lot of money and it was painful, but the thing that that hurt the most, that could have easily driven me off the edge, and I'll mention that in a second, was the fact that I had people that I had known for many years, decades, that had invested with me, both money and their energy and their support. And I had some of them coming to me and saying, you know what, you are the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I've known you 30 years. I hope you rot in hell. And it was those moments where I lost my identity and went into a place where it was kind of a suicidal place because I didn't know that I had any value here. It would have been very easy to give up there. And I thank God that I didn't. And I kept going. But man, you want to talk about a quitting moment. When you hear that from people that have known you since you were 3 years old, it is a rough space to be in. So I'm grateful that I went through that and did the work to get to where we are today. But that was a rough time, man.
Well, I didn't know the full extent of that, and I appreciate you being so open with us. If you don't mind me asking you, what during that time were you doing, whether it was what you're reading or seeing or putting in front of your mind, your eyes, that kept you going during those definitely tough times, especially when you mentioned friends and people you've known for decades?
Well, there was a period of 2 years where I was basically isolating, and I did what I think a lot of people end up doing. I numbed myself and just ended up dating a lot and drinking a lot. And that was how I got to the point where I said, okay, something has got to shift. And that's when I asked for help. And I found somebody in Texas that was willing to sit with me for 2 years every week. And he asked me one question, and he asked me, what is true? And I had to go deeper and deeper past the layers of all the ego and all of the stuff, all the belief systems that I had baked into myself, and find out who I was. And that was the process. It was somebody else that asked the questions. The answers were inside me. They were waiting, just like they are with all of us. I just needed somebody to help me figure out what the question was.
I think it's so awesome that you touch on that in the sense of, I asked you a very specific question, and one of the things you said was you asked for help, and I can't repeat that enough because I think it's something that in life people, and I'm definitely guilty myself of it, but people look at asking for help as a sign of weakness. And I think that's whether that's through society or through the media. I actually look at it completely the opposite. And I've gone through some tough times myself, and I've humbly asked for help, but I've gotten some help and some connection from some of the most amazing people. But I can honestly say that if I didn't ask for help, it wouldn't have happened on its own. And it's not that people don't and aren't willing to help others, but you have to not only ask for it, but you have to be ready to receive it.
That's the key right there. And you're right. It's not that there's a lack of people that want to help. I love helping people. People love helping me. They love helping other people. What people don't love is somebody that asks for help and then doesn't take what they help and do anything with it. That's what makes people crazy. And if you are willing to ask people and then do something with it, it's unbelievable the resources that come your way. It's like this providence ensues because you're open to receiving. This is why it's impossible, or probably a really bad idea, to want to help or try to help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. They'll just resist it, and it makes both of you crazy.
It's interesting that you touch on that. I was working with a client about a week or two ago, and they were trying to help one of their friends, and basically they went through kind of a synopsis of the relationship, and I just looked at her and I said, you're coming from all the right places and you mean so well. I said, but unfortunately, I said, your friend is not ready. And she looked at me and she said, you know what, I totally see it. So I'm glad you touched on that, because it's not only just being willing to, but that person or you yourself need to be ready, because if I needed help and you were totally willing to help me and ready, but I wasn't ready to receive it, there's nothing you can do to make me ready myself. I have to be ready as well.
Right. That's the difference between forcing something and the power of being in a relationship where you're serving each other and you're dancing together. It's very different than trying to attack somebody with what you think is right for them without them saying, here's what I want, and you do it together. It is a completely different energy. One has a possibility of achieving great things, and one is destined for failure.
No, that's so great that you touched on that. So wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just briefly telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I mean, at the essence, my core is that I'm a teacher, and it's everything that I do, everything I'm about has to do with my mission. And that was something that shifted after the meltdown. Was instead of focusing on straight up money, because that was kind of my God in a way for about a decade, just figuring out how to have more money, it really shifted into a mission, and the mission is to free 1 million people from financial bondage. So I do that in a lot of different ways. I do it when I teach martial arts, and I do it in the finance world, and it's because it serves my soul to serve others. And this actually came up about 4 years ago. There was a trigger event, and people that have had one of these things will know what I'm getting at, or they'll go, yeah, I had one of those. I was sitting down with my dad right before he died, about 6 weeks before he died, and we were chatting, and it was kind of a goodbye conversation. And he looked at me and he said, there were just so many things that I wanted to do. And I cracked, I died a little bit. I was in pain thinking, oh my God, I experienced regret right there. I know what that feels like, it looks like. And I thought, I do not want to ever have that conversation and say those words to somebody. And there's got to be a different way that I can live so I can inspire other people to also be in a place where at the end, they're not saying that, but they're saying, wow, everything I had, I gave. So that's what really switched me over to a place where I was thinking, how can I play a bigger game? How can I serve more? It wasn't just about consuming anymore. It was about being a teacher and sharing everything I had, not because I read a book, but because I was willing to live something and share those experiences in a bigger way.
It's interesting that you touch on that. I don't want to butcher the quote or where it came from, but I remember listening to another podcast a few weeks ago, and somebody was talking about nursing homes and seniors that are within a year or so of their death. And when they ask and when they talk about regrets and things, nobody ever says, I wish I worked more, and I wish I took less vacations. It's all the other stuff that they say that they wish they had done. So I applaud you for sharing that story about your father. But the other thing is you took action. That's a big thing we talk about at No Quit Living, and the main focus of ours is accountability, and we break down accountability into 3 A's: action, application, and attitude. And I think I've been asked many times, but action is the most important aspect of that. So I'm glad you touched on sharing that story, because it is about learning and it is about doing it. And I think your mission of helping 1 million people is awesome. But what I love most about your mission is you didn't say, I want to earn X amount of dollars, or I want to sell my business for this amount of money. And that's the same thing we focus on with our company. Is it's all about paying it forward. So I'm really honored that you're here to share a little bit about that with us. But more importantly, I think your mission of helping 1 million people in their financial world is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. It's fascinating to me that if somebody were to ask me, what I would do with $100 million. I always like to ask people, hey, if I give you 10 million, because 100 million is too far fetched, but if I gave somebody 10 million bucks, what would you do? And I get all these answers like, I would give away this, and I would buy my mom a house, and I would do these things. And I go, okay, so what about the work you're doing? They're like, oh, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be doing something different. And if somebody were to hand me $100 million, I would hire more people and continue doing exactly what I'm doing because I'm so in love with it. It's because when I settled down into a space of awareness, this is one of my pet peeves, the idea that the law of attraction is going to serve you where you're just going to think a bag of money is going to hit you in the head. The truth is, if you're settled down and you're aware, and then you have something that's driving you that fires you up to go do it, all that money is the side effect. It's not the goal anymore. It just happens as like a 90-degree effect, instead of it being this obsession that's really never going to be satisfied. And that's what I was doing 10 years ago. It's really a big shift. And I hope for everybody that they find that in their lives if they haven't found it already, because the freedom and the peace that you find when you're in that space of letting go of the money being your obsession is, I mean, it's like heaven on earth.
No, it's so true. And I'm glad you talked about that, and you talked about helping everybody find it. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, how do you personally define success?
Success is getting lost in the things that I'm involved with, where I literally lose time and space. And it's the best place for me, the most present I am, is when I'm in the dojo. And to me, there's success by being deeply present. I think the further present, the deeper present I am, is the more success. It's not a checkbox anymore. It used to be about the next house I bought or the next, $100,000 I made. It's those things I really could care less about. To me, it's this process of fulfillment, which is really based on the idea of mastery and moving through life on some particular path. It's not about hitting a milestone. I mean, milestones are interesting, but I don't really care that much about the success. I think a lot of that feeds ego and the significance need that we have, but it doesn't really do anything to satisfy our soul. And so I focus on the fulfillment a lot more than the success factor. It's interesting that you say the word fulfillment. That word has been repeated probably almost every other episode in some way, shape, or form when it comes to success. And that's the really interesting part, because success is not a yes or no answer. It's individualized, it's personalized. So I appreciate you touching on that. So if you had to define yourself in only one word, what would that word be? Obsessed. That's a great word, and I think it probably touches on all different aspects of life, not just for you, but for all different people. So I think that's a really good definition of who you are, just based on how I know you to this point. So I appreciate you touching on that. And that's actually the first time that I think in over 130 interviews that the word obsessed has been used. Chris, there's something that the reason that pops up, it's fascinating that I've studied and read a lot of Grant Cardone's books, and he's got a book called Be Obsessed or Be Average. I was just about to say that. Well, here's the thing. There is a very unhealthy fixation on going and killing a lot of things, killing more deals, making more money, having 40 hustles, and you're just doing all this stuff if you don't have a deeper underlying focus on why you're doing it. And my obsession is with a mission. It's not about, like, when I'm on a call with somebody or I'm working with somebody, I'm figuring out how can I serve them and make their life better. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with selling them anything. I'm figuring out what is going on with them. And then I might be just punting. I might be saying, you're doing great and good luck. But there's an obsession around that mission to elevate other people. And when you go into that space, all of a sudden you become a farmer that has all these amazing things happen. Like fruit is coming out of these trees and stuff where you plant seeds, you're nurturing things instead of trying to kill things everywhere, which is what we tend to do as the obsessed hunters do in the current world we live in. So the obsession with a mission, I think, is a huge shift from maybe what Grant talks about so much, or at least how people interpret it. Yeah, no, and I think as in any area of life is there's ways, both positive and negative, and probably just indifferent, of being obsessed. And it's good in many ways to be obsessed, and it's obviously you can be overly obsessive in some ways. So I think that's pretty interesting. So one of the things we always look to do is add value to our listeners in all different areas during our show. And I was curious if you have either a morning or a daily ritual that you swear by. Yeah, I do. I'm a big fan of Hal Elrod's book with the Morning Miracle and the whole Savers process. I've taken some of the stuff with meditation and stillness. In my book in Reinvented Life, I talk about stillness, and I think this is one of the missing pieces. We tend to be active even when we're sitting still, where we're watching Facebook and we're scrolling, and like we're never actually still. So in the morning when I start, before I even get out of bed, there's a meditative process, and I'm blank slating myself. I'm getting all of the jumbled noise that's been built up, that's pent up. I'm helping allow it to channel through me. And one of the ways I do that is through belly breath. And there's a physiological process, and everybody can do this. You can sit there on your phone driving. You can actually do this process where you breathe into your belly. And the reason you do that is because you shift from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. What that means is you go from the fight or flight to the rest and digest state if you're breathing into your belly. And people don't do it because we think it looks weird if we actually breathe into our belly. We breathe into our chest, and it keeps us in a very tense state where we're not allowing our body to actually recover, and we tend to be in a fighting space energetically, and it's very unhealthy. So if we can simply change our breath, we can start to become present, and then all of a sudden we can focus and become aware of what's going on and how to best serve whatever it is we're doing or the people that we're serving.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned Hal Elrod. He was on my show, and his podcast was one of the 2 podcasts that I actually first started listening, and he's one of the reasons why I actually launched the No Quit Living podcast in the first place. So it's pretty neat when you have somebody. And I think you definitely have been successful, and I believe that it's how you start your day is how you get an opportunity and a better opportunity to win your day. So I'm glad you touched on some of the things that you do, because it's interesting, and that's the best part for our listeners, just to learn different things. And for me, I'm always intrigued by what others are doing, and a lot of times there are things that I haven't done or tried, and meditation is something, for example, that I'm trying to get a lot more into, and it's one of those things that's often repeated. So hopefully our listeners will try some of those things you mentioned, and you never know, they might stick.
I hope it does. It'll literally change your life if you can get out of that trigger state where you're constantly in the fight state. It's actually really it's amazing how it'll shift your immune system. It shifts your entire physiology. You'll all of a sudden become healthier, and your relationships will change by doing something as simple as sticking your belly out when you breathe. I mean, it's weird, but it works.
No, it definitely does work, and I'm nowhere an expert, incredibly a novice in it, but the breathing techniques and meditating and all those things obviously have some huge impact, not only on a daily, but ongoing for business and life in general, and clearly health. So I'm glad you touched on that. So I wanted to ask you, assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what's the one piece of advice you would have given to the 20-year-old Damion?
I would have said, listen to a guy that's bald or gray that's telling you to fail faster. I would have said, make sure you have that guy or that gal, whoever that is in your life that you listen to, and let them push you super hard to fail as many times as fast as possible. You know,
I love that, and it's going to lead into my next question, but it's funny. Mickey Rooney's not known for his knowledge in the sense of what he says. He's more known for obviously being a successful actor, but he has one of my favorite quotes is, "You always pass failure on your way to success." So I was curious, do you have a favorite quote yourself?
Yeah, the quote has been totally twisted. The essence of it is that every mistake is a gift wrapped up in pain, and when we start to embrace those things, those mistakes, those gifts, everything starts to change in our life, because it's literally a gift from God.
No, that's awesome, and I've actually never heard that quote, so I appreciate you sharing that. So if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Anybody dead or alive. I would love to be in the presence of O-Sensei Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido. And it's not because I want to listen to anything. I simply want to experience his presence.
You know, and obviously just knowing you as I do, that would obviously be something that you would enjoy. And I'm sure whether it was an hour or 2 hours, you'd definitely learn a ton of stuff. But knowing you'd definitely apply it and pay it forward.
Yeah, I think that's the greatest thing we can do when we learn something is to do something like the 3 A's, the action piece. There's any information that we get that we don't apply is literally wasted. It's almost wasted energy to even absorb it or to take it into our mind if we're not going to do something with it. So I think there's a key there that you hit on that is absolutely critical. You can't just absorb things and say, oh, I know more. You got to do more.
No, I love that. You definitely need to do more, and I think taking the best knowledge and information and just keeping it to yourself is almost in this identical to having no information or no knowledge.
It is. It's incredibly selfish too, because you're not really sharing, and there's a gift that you can give by simply sharing. It's an abundant world, and this is a scarcity mindset that I think a lot of people have bought into that simply doesn't serve them or anybody else.
No, an abundant world and abundance, the word, both of them are interchangeable, but they mean so much to me personally because you're always looking, and I feel, for abundance in all areas of your life. So before we went live on the recording, you were talking about two really exciting projects and things that you're working on that are releasing in the next couple months. I wanted to just give you an opportunity and ask you to please share some of those exciting things with our listeners.
Yeah, definitely. So there's two things. One of the ones I tiptoed a little bit around when I had that event with my dad, and it was playing a bigger game, and I realized that serving people one-on-one was powerful, but it wasn't really leveraged. And what I wanted to do is be able to serve more people and give them the best that I have, everything that I've got. And so Black Belt Wealth Academy is the result of that. It launches the end of May in 2018. And it's where people can go through the process that I teach one-on-one. It's available to the entire planet, and there's literally no financial barrier to be able to go through that process. There's a buy-in, and yet there's no way that somebody can say I can't do that for any reason. And it's my way of sharing with the world and playing a bigger game. And then the other project is Transformation Nation, the show that launches the end of June, and it's a series of interviews and conversations with transformers, people that are transforming the world to their focus, their impact, their mission, and we're going to have a lot of fun with those. And it's going to be inspirational, and it's going to give people, I think, a lot of energy towards tapping into what they have that can transform the world too.
No, that's really cool, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I think hopefully our listeners will connect or follow you because they both sound like pretty exciting things. And I know when we were talking before, you were excited about them, and you probably understated the amount of work and effort you put into it. So it's definitely going to be a success. So what I'd like to do is change lanes with you here into what we call our hot seat questions, and the only request we make of you is just that you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. So if you had one last meal and you can choose anything at all, what would you choose?
A peanut butter cup.
Awesome. What is your favorite smell?
My favorite smell is lavender.
Favorite sport?
Favorite sport, martial arts, Aikido.
Favorite team?
Favorite team? Holy crap. I'm from Alaska. We don't have teams. We have dog sleds. So the Seawolves? I don't know.
What's the race? Yeah, Iditarod. Yeah, there we go. All right. All time.
Yeah, I have a musher. I don't have a team. I just have a neighbor that ran with a bunch of dogs.
All right. Well, then it counts. Then you get that works. Right, cool. It's a different team. All time favorite movie.
All time favorite movie, Goonies.
Oh, great movie. Great flick. Favorite book.
Mastery.
Favorite singer or band or group.
Goo Goo Dolls.
And if you were in a foxhole and you could only choose one person to have your back, who would it be?
Chris Ashby.
So one question we've started incorporating is, if you could snap your finger and magically fast forward to 1 year from now and you could pick one goal that you would have accomplished, what would that be?
The first 1,000 people were free.
That's an awesome goal. And then before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, the most powerful thing right now is that you're listening to this and you're alive and you've got a chance to make a choice to do something with your life. And this is the one shot you've got. This is not a warm-up. This is not a preview. This is it. This is the main event. And for so many people, they're waiting for that one day when they're going to start living. And the truth is that day is today. And whatever you've got, it's time to let it loose and share it with the world. I hope you guys will do that, and I hope you'll start today.
No, that's great advice. And then the last question is, for our listeners that would like to connect with you or follow you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Visit me at DamionLupo.com. You'll see the academy and the show. Just come visit me there, and And you can download a lot of the stuff that I'm working on and the workbooks that really are going to give you new questions. And that's the point. Giving you questions will help you pull the answers to you. So I'm going to give that to you. That's the first thing you're going to run into is new questions.
That's great, and it reminds me of a book by a mentor of mine and actually a friend, John C. Maxwell. Is great. Good leaders ask great questions. I think people that ask great questions are typically the ones that take it and then use it and learn from it. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely. I'm sitting here staring at one of John's books right now called Failing Forward. Ironic twist.
Book. So listen, Damion, I truly appreciate you spending some time with us. It was a blast not only getting to talk to you before we went live, but I really, really would recommend our listeners not only following you, checking out, but definitely keeping an eye in the next couple of months as you have those two really exciting things launching.
I appreciate it, Chris. I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a great honor to be able to hang out, and it's been a lot of fun. So, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you, man. I look forward to having this conversation continue into the future.
I appreciate it, my man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to episode number 118. Damion really delivered, and he shared some really great pieces of information throughout the episode. About 6 weeks before Damion's father unfortunately passed away, they were having a conversation, and Damion's father told him that there were so many things that he wanted to do. What a deep comment that hit Damion to the core. When I asked him about his advice he would give to the 20-year-old version of himself, he said something that I just loved. He mentioned that he wished he had listened to people that were telling him to fail faster in life and to fail more often. In his parting words, Damion stressed the importance of making a choice with our lives, how we only live once, and to make sure you don't waste it. For today's conclusion, I will ask you one simple thing. If we could all fast forward to our deathbed, what would we say? What would you like to be able to say? Will you live the rest of your life with those regrets and what ifs? Or will you make a decision today, from this exact moment that you're listening to this podcast, to just go for it? Will you attack each and every day so that even if you don't accomplish every single goal of yours, you will never wonder? I challenge you today, as you go for your greatness, remain focused, positive, and never have to ask yourself, what if? And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.